Today is Thursday, May the 16th, 2024, and welcome to episode 96 of Rural Reliance with Canny Couple. I'm Julia.
And I'm Aaron.
We're a small homestead family in rural Southwest Virginia that work every single day on reducing our outside dependencies, merging homesteading and frugality. And we've talked a lot about how we've built our homestead and how we tend to build our life and focus, but today we really want to talk about why we focus on long-term versus short-term, especially when it comes to the homestead.
Yeah, and we might look at it a lot different than other people
Yes.
do. And we'll go...
We have a way different approach.
Right, and we'll talk through some of the whys.
Absolutely, why, what we feel is beneficial for us. So we've always focused on what we wanted for our homestead with long-term in mind. We've never looked at it like, here's what I want tomorrow. Let's go do it.
Right. A lot of it from the fruit tree, for examples, was looking at it from, okay, in 10 to 15 years from now, I want to be able to supply most of our own fruit.
Absolutely. And we are getting really close to that. I mean, we are. This year, we're starting to produce. We're going to have apricots and plums. That'll take care of a lot of our fruit. My goal is to eventually have 2 to 3 jars of fruit on hand for every week. And that would be a good number for us. But we've always had, a vision of what our homestead would be. And that vision has changed over the years. So I'm kind of glad we went slow. It's given us time to learn and develop.
Yes. Or to find new things that just come out.
Absolutely. So when we first started homesteading, we hadn't pulled in the field, but then we kept buying more fruit trees. So we have this side field that we ended up filling with trees. But there's this one swatch of the property that has nothing there. So we had talked about putting a shed there for Aaron to do some other type of work in. And then, we looked at it and we were like, well, does that really make sense long term? And then we decided maybe swells. Well, then we've changed our mind to maybe a high tunnel.
We still don't know if that's the right choice.
We still don't know if that's the right choice for us. So it's given us time to really push forward and push for what we want, especially as we're going through. We're learning what our family needs are, what our long-term needs are. As we continue to grow in our homestead journey. And that's so important. I feel like everybody jumps into it and they think they know, but until you're doing it, you really don't know.
I mean, you might say, oh, I want those chickens and cows and pigs today. Then you're like, well, 2 years from now, maybe I should have got the cows.
Or the pigs.
Or the pigs.
It depends on you and your homestead. It really does. It totally depends on what your needs of your homestead are. For us, our needs are very different. Our approach is very different to homesteading. We're going to focus on our primary needs. That's our focus. Yep. We're looking at this long term. How do we produce our long-term needs going forward? Not today, not tomorrow, but we're talking 5, 10, 30 years down the road. So, why is this so important to us? It really lets us lean into the slow build.
It does. From the perspective of taking time on projects, figuring them out, not rushing on them.
Absolutely. Learning new skills, learning how to do things better, more efficient, where we need to put things on the property and not making mistakes. Because we were thinking long term, we just put trees everywhere. It doesn't matter. We weren't thinking long term. And we also do this from a frugality standpoint. We build at the speed of cash.
Right. So, if we don't have room in the budget for something this month, that isn't going to get built this month. Maybe next month.
Or we have to set aside a certain amount of funds for that when we're looking forward, because we know we have a duck coop, or hopefully, that's probably one of the primary builds on our list for this year is to get the duck coop set up.
Yeah.
But that might be later in the year, and it's going to be whenever we have the cash for the building materials. That's what we focus on. So because of that, we're able to do it without going into debt, without adding anything extra to our budget. We're actually able to foresee and plan through these. It really gives us the ability to work through what's going to work best for our homestead. And this is important. And I don't think people spend enough time on this.
A lot of people just will see, a picture and be like, that's what I want. But does it work best? Have you thought about, hey, that was on flat land. That picture I saw, I'm on a hillside. Will that work here? You know,
Like, we thought swells were the way to go till we realized the swell doesn't work on our type of property.
right. So I mean, there's all kind of things you have to research and do your due diligence into, to not get into a rush and take your time on.
Absolutely, and it really focuses on you and your family. I like to think of Rain Country. She's like, to me, the epitome example of this. How her homestead works. It's smaller,
Mm-hmm.
and they don't have the cows and all of this other stuff. They have some chickens, and she has her garden areas, and she's really utilized all of her space.
Yeah.
She has utilized everything she can to make her homestead so functional, not for anybody else, but for her and her family. That's what her entire focus is on, is like, well, this is what my family eats, so this is how we eat it, and that's what I'm going to focus on. It's how I really started living our life for our homestead.
It is.
We stopped growing foods that were experimental, like, or instead of half our garden being experimental, we might have like a little bed or a pot that's experimental. We've focused more on the foods we know we eat, we know we like. We know we can make other meals from that we're going to enjoy throughout the year. It's really been our primary focus. So it was really allowed me to really learn what my family needs, especially for me, because I feel like, women tend to be the ones who push for the homestead more and are, managing
True.
it more in what we see.
In today's society, yes.
Yep. And that's what you hear. Like, if your wife starts baking bread, go ahead and start building her the chicken coop now. That's what they say. That's the thing. Like, you better start building her a chicken coop now. Figured out where to put a cow. And that's not always the case. I'd say a lot of times it's not the case, but it is a dream and it's a goal to have a little piece of security. And I feel like that's what homesteading represents to a lot of people. But by going slow, I've really been able to focus on what my family needs.
Yes.
Slowly.
Yes.
And learning as we go through this journey, like making homemade bread. My little one won't eat store-bought bread, but she will eat homemade bread.
Yeah. Homemade sourdough.
Yeah, or homemade white bread.
Yeah, either one.
Either one. But you can't get her to eat a store-bought piece of bread at all.
Mm-mm.
So I'm learning that she likes the homemade stuff a lot better than she likes the store-bought stuff. Just naturally enjoys it better.
Which is great.
Which is amazing. Because no trial and error, no adjustment here. And that's working out really well for us. So it really does help. You would think this is such an insignificant thing in that you already know what your family needs. I'm still learning what my family needs and what works best for our family. Like, we don't know if we need ducks. I want ducks mostly for the meat. We like duck meat. It is.
We do. I don't know. Maybe I want ducks to sell duck eggs.
He might. We got to figure.
I don't know.
Let's see. It lets you build for the future, and what we're talking about is when you get older. This has always been a focus. You've heard us talk about this. And you're going to make... So one of the big things we look at whenever we're building is accessibility.
We don't look at it from today's perspective.
No, because we know we're going to get older.
We look at it from 20 to 30 year perspective.
We know we can push hard now.
Right.
We know we can push hard now.
But, let's say our entrance to the duck coop might require you to step up awful high. That might not be the best idea in the future. We might need something that's easy to just gingerly step over.
Exactly.
Stuff like that's what we try to take into consideration. How would this work if we were older, and having to manage this?
Absolutely. Well, we struggle with this. Do we have access to drive when we have a UTV? This is something we're looking at, and it's kind of put a bit of a damper on like where we put things, how we're setting things up, but we're looking at it with that in mind. So like our front yard, we know 5 to 10 feet has to be accessible from the very front. Nothing could go there. That is a path.
Right.
It's our path through the property. Where our cold frame. Yes, that's another place where it's a path through the property. Right beside of that, we have a little bit of room we can work with, But we're limited because now we have to watch these pathways where we've kind of already put a lot of infrastructure in. We've learned a lot more. Now we're thinking we're going to get older. We thought the same thing when we redid our house. We made sure there was a washing machine upstairs. So if we have to wash clothes, we can wash them upstairs. We're not having to try to walk downstairs. Falls are very detrimental once you get older.
Yeah.
It can really hurt you and put you down. So we want to make sure we're watching them. We're also setting it up for the weakest link, depending on what the process is.
Yes.
We're really trying to set it up. So if it's something that requires a lot of heavy lifting, we try to figure it out. So I don't have to do 3 hours of lifting something that's 50 pounds. It's not feasible for me. I can do a little bit of that, but I can't do it hour after hour after hour like Aaron does. So there has to be another solution for me. I can't use the broad fork, but I can use the wheel hoe.
That's very true.
I'm better at the wheel hoe than Aaron is.
Yes. And I think it's because I try to...
He's too ginger with it.
I was going to say sometimes, and then the other times, I'm afraid I'm going to bend the tines too much.
He's too ginger. He's too easy with it. But Haas made that tool to go through. But we definitely try to set up our processes to make sure that we're focused on who's the weakest link. And a lot of times, a lot of our homestead tasks, depending on what it is, if it's a lot of heavy lifting, a lot of manual labor, I'm going to be the weaker of us. I have a really hard time carrying the buckets from the driveway all the way up to the garden. I can't carry as many as Aaron can. I physically cannot. I can't carry two. They're heavy. I mean, they're extremely heavy. But Aaron can. But when it comes to building processes, finding ways to do things, I'm more of the upfront person for that.
Correct.
We were carrying grass up to the to the potato patch, and I had 4 buckets. They're light, not very heavy, but I know I can't carry. I don't have enough hands for that. So instead, I took the hoe and I was able to loop it through, and I could carry 6 buckets at one time. That worked out really well.
Right.
And it wasn't too heavy. So it's just one of those things we have to think about. The other thing we have to consider is there's only 2 of us. In 30 years, we're hoping, we're hopeful.
We're hopeful that the little one wants to do it, but we might be different than other homesteaders.
We're very different than other homesteaders.
We are not setting up processes to rely on the kids.
We're not. Just there to help.
Yes.
Help us, but we are part of that process.
Exactly, because if that kid decides not to do it, how are we supposed to manage that if they're not around?
Exactly.
We have to know how to do it. We have to be able to do it.
And we have to be able to work it in with everything else. So it's like, well, this is my sole responsibility, but then this is somebody else's sole responsibility. Then it doesn't matter that somebody goes back and looks at that. And this is where we're controversial, because we feel that I have to be able to work it into my day. It doesn't matter if it's 5 minutes or 10 minutes. You think that's what it's going to take. If you're continuously doing it, you're continuously working with it. And it's still good to do it with your child.
It is. So they learn these things.
They learn. Well, not only that, though, it's a bonding experience. You did this with them. So maybe she weeds the garden with me, and she helps her daddy clean the duck pond.
Yep.
That might be the takeaway. Like, having them there to help, they learn the skill, but we're still the primary on the skill and working with them and teaching them as they grow older, just in case we still have to pick that extra task up. Because what we don't want to happen is we don't want to build this massive infrastructure and have all these processes in place that rely on 3 people and then lose a person. Because that can happen. It can very well happen. And it's very important to make sure that your processes are built for the 2 people who are most likely going to be doing it all the time.
Right.
Because you cannot depend on that. She might want to be a doctor or a vet, or Ellie may claim it somewhere else, and this just is her thing.
Yeah.
And we totally get that. We support that. We want her to want this lifestyle. We're hopeful, but she's 2. We don't know.
Right.
She doesn't either.
No.
So just one of those things you have to really look at. It allows us to make more improvements as we go on. So as we're doing things and we're, working on the property, we're realizing things don't work very well,
right.
or we're not being as efficient with our time.
Or something needs an upgrade to it.
So we're going to continuously work through those processes and really focus on making sure they're improved for future use. So if it's something that requires me to do a lot of bending down and things like that, I'm thinking, well, right now this isn't a big deal, but maybe we have to rethink this older.
Yeah.
I'm thinking our in-ground garden. Our in-ground garden might have to start going to raised beds, and it's not a right now thing.
No, but in the
10
future.
10 to 15 years, it's probably an update we're going to have to think of doing, because we want to do it slow so it doesn't hit our budget.
Right, because that would be a lot of
That would
beds.
be a lot of raised beds and a lot of dirt to move. These are all.
I'm just like, oh gosh.
Well, hopefully we'll have enough chicken and all of the other stuff while we're
maybe
doing
some from the garden itself, but still,
it's a lot of work.
That is.
Because we would want them high enough that we're not having to bend down and bend over and do all these things. So we would want the 4-foot high ones.
Mm-hmm.
And these are things we have to think about because we are going to get older and we don't want to have to do it again. I don't want to get a 2-foot high bed and then realize this wasn't a good idea. I probably needed the 4-foot high bed and then trying to figure out how to get it all together when I'm older and having to rely on somebody or pay somebody to do it for me.
Right.
It says we always look to the future.
Yep.
We always look to the thought that we are going to get old. We get older every day. We're going to get older. And it can be backbreaking work, especially if you're doing a lot of your work by hand, which we do. You can ask Aaron that rod fork is hard work.
That is. You feel that for a few days.
So it's just things you have to consider. It allows us to make investments into our homestead for future gains. So we just talked about this with the fruit trees. That's what we're seeing right now.
It is.
It is.
Like, this was stuff we planted
when we first started, 7
years ago, that are starting to produce now, which, starting to see some fruits of our labor there, for example. But we planned on it taking this long.
Absolutely. Which is why I think that was one of the first things we focused on. A lot of people don't really focus on the trees at first.
Well, you're usually focused on what you can get done now. Our idea was at the time that if we want this by the time we're 50, we've got to get it in the ground like yesterday, for example.
Yes, but we also had really mature apple trees on the property that were Aaron's age, so we knew how long these things took to produce. So we were aware, it was kind of at the forethought of our mind. This was a good start to our homestead. Again, it's why we've taken a very different approach. I have not seen any other homesteaders take our approach.
No, and we're probably the only ones probably talking about this because, delayed gratification.
And doing it on a budget.
Yeah.
I mean, we didn't at first, and we've talked about that. We talked about our journey through that. We didn't do it the way we would do it now. But we did it in a way that we're still good with. We're still okay with. It still works for us. We love having fruit trees. We're hoping that eventually we can profit from that.
Yep.
Fingers crossed. But that, we probably would have done it a bit different. We'd have been a bit older, a bit wiser at that point. But we're making progress. We're going to have so much fruit this year. I think I want to be able to beat my 2 to 3 jars of fruit this year because nothing got bit. And as long as everything keeps doing its thing, we're going to be okay. So now, how do you make a shift? You're in the middle of your homestead, and we want to say this. There's always things you have to do today to get there. Don't think we don't focus on, like, tomorrow all the time. Like, we know plants need to go in the ground.
Stuff's got to get done today.
Yeah.
Type of thing. And I talk about that a lot. I'm probably too much. I'm like, we got to get this done now,
Yeah. this is priority. This is a priority. This needs to be a priority. And I'm just like, okay, my list of priorities is becoming a list of a lot of stuff. Which is okay, and that's just part of it. But and you can also get lost in this focusing on tomorrow to where you get stuck and don't take any action. Right. So you don't want that to happen. And we have had that happen to us before, where we've kind of stalled in the homestead and we're like kind of stuck with future goals. But I feel like we've really learned to pivot from that, and now we're seeing, you know, a way forward.
Yeah.
Because, you know, I think it was the animals that we had the biggest issue with.
It was on where we wanted to go in that route. We did a lot of research.
And we saw everybody have all the big animals, and we're just like, God, that's just not for us.
Well, even when we would get the farm homesteading magazines, I would be like, well, what about this one? Look at this. This is a great article.
He still does. Even though it's not on the list. Oh, the yak.
The yak. Hey.
So
anybody have any yaks? Put that down below the comment.
I doubt anybody has any yaks. It's the Highland cow. If you have a Highland cow, put it down in the comments below. Or a donkey. Likely. Tell me what you use a donkey for on a homestead.
Besides pulling a plow.
Do you actually use it to pull a plow? Or do you have a tractor? See, but Papa had a donkey. But he had a tractor.
Yep.
So the donkey didn't have purpose other than to eat and to be mean. Okay, so how do you make this shift? So you want to ask yourself how this will work in 5 years, 10 years, 30 years. You're going to ask yourself, like, how's this going to function for me? And how's this going to benefit my family long term? Is this going to give us benefit? So
if it doesn't give benefit, is it even worth it?
Right. So we've gotten so good at this lately, for the most part, depending on the project, that I can come up with ideas and we don't have to run through this exercise every single time.
Right.
So we just had some trees cut down. Mass swatch trees. And we're going to put up a fence. But we have property now that's opened up that we didn't realize. We knew it was there.
We didn't realize how much
was there. And it was kind of useless because this was where a lot of poison ivy was for us. Aaron can't get it.
Useless.
Very useless. We stayed away from it, avoided it, and we had nothing to do with this part of the property. But now it's opened up, and we have a good piece of property right next to the house. So we're looking at it, and I'm like, I've got a place for a strawberry patch. Yep. From here to here, it can go in ground. And then all the way down the other side, we have a place for pots. Now, we have to be careful. We have to think long term. Well, why not just put a strawberry patch down the whole thing? Well, if they have to get to our well pump again,
then we would have to destroy another strawberry patch.
We'd have to destroy a strawberry patch, which is not what we want to do. So, if we put pots there, yes, it would be a pain in the butt to move the pots. But we shouldn't have to mess with the well pump that often, that's going to become a huge pain in the butt.
Right. But, maybe it's something we see now before the fence gets up too, Do we have a way now to put in a manual pump even?
Exactly.
These type of things. These type of things are things we're thinking about long term, for example. Being able to get water when there's, no power, but at the same time, it's something we have to think about today.
It is. It's something we have to think about today for the future. So we're really looking at everything in a different viewpoint, a different mindset. I know strawberries are something that I need a massive amount of on our homestead. I need to be able to grow my own so I can freeze dry them. Right now, buying them to freeze dry is not economical. Not for the cost to run through the freeze dryer, not for the cost of the strawberries. He wanted to.
And not for as many as the little one will eat.
She can eat them. She will not eat a fresh one. It gets her hands messy. But she loves a freeze-dried one. This is the phase we're in. But I know I need a lot of strawberries. And if she doesn't eat them,
I will.
Aaron will. So, tons of strawberry patches put throughout the property. We have to do it carefully because they will be destroyed by deer if we are not. And not just deer, but bunnies and other animals. Now, our current strawberry patch that we've built, we're a little worried that we need to take it up a bit. So
we're worried that we didn't build it tall enough.
we're worried we didn't build it tall enough. We thought it was, but I don't think it is. So we're going to have to make an adjustment there and pivot, but we'll know for the next one. And we'll be able to get another 100, maybe 100, 150 strawberry plants in this area.
I mean, that was 50.
That was 50.
That was 50 there. I mean,
maybe even 2 or 3.
Maybe 200, I was going to say.
Which is an amazing amount of strawberries. Right. It's a really big patch, and it's one of several that are planned in the future.
Yeah.
For our family. But that's how we work through it. So how's this going to benefit my family? It's a perennial. It's a perennial my family likes to eat. It's going to save me money because then I don't have to buy them, run them through my own freeze dryer, and take care of that cost. So there's number one. Why is this the best option for this place? Because it's a really good place next to the house. It's a very good location. I don't know of any other food I would want to grow there. Because it could get ate by other animals, the strawberries,
it would have to be something that is not well liked by animals, or, that we can protect somehow.
Yes. So for me, the strawberries just make the most practical sense for fruit-wise, because we already have an abundance of blueberries. Our newer blueberry bushes are starting to produce. We have an abundance of trees, but we don't want to put trees there,
right?
Because we just cut down trees, and not only that, we have our water lines there, so we have to be careful of that as well.
Yeah, the only thing I could think possible would be like maybe a bush on each end of it. The
gooseberries. I thought gooseberries down the one side.
I was thinking the Orris 8 just because how prickly they are. Somebody tries to get by on those sides of it.
They are. It's one of the worst.
It's one of the worst things I've ever seen.
It's one of the worst things. You cannot even look at it without getting stuck. It is so bad.
It hurts.
It hurts so bad, and I need to trim it up because it's taking up. It keeps growing. It's going to take up half the garden before too long. And he doesn't like to prune, so it's so hard for him to just. But this one's going to have to be.
This one has to be something.
But there's a lot of green shoots we could probably cut off to try to propagate.
Yeah, we need to try to propagate this one.
So,
I guess we need to try to propagate this one.
They are very good. They're very good. They're very different. Good.
But we got to figure out a better way to pick those.
Yes, maybe the chainmail gloves or something. I don't know. I think they'd still come through it. I think you feel it. So what do you think is the most important part of looking at long term when you're doing your homesteading? Why should you not just focus on the short term?
Because short term might give you quick gains, but might not give you the long term fulfillment that you need on your homestead. For example, if you didn't plant your trees early on in your process and looked at it from a long-term perspective, 10 years from now, you decide you want to plant trees. Okay, well, now it's another 15 years. So that's 25 years on the homestead, for example, that you might not have trees.
I think of Danny Wanda and his sugar cane, but also his small trees that he has that he's planted. And they haven't been the most beautiful homesteads. But man, wouldn't you love to plant that 10 years ago?
I know. Or have the ability to plant some of those in our zone.
I know. In that zone. We're not in that zone. We can't plant the citruses. It would be lovely, though. Mm-hmm. For me, it's really making sure we focus on, 2 people we can link. One person can manage it, because we know we've had that happen where one person has to be able to manage it.
One's been down.
I mean, we've had that happen multiple times. Aaron knocked himself out with the postal driver. He was down. I didn't need him then. It was more my job, but he was trying to rush my job, and that's what happens.
No comment.
He knows.
I know.
But we've learned through it that, and making sure we're looking to the future. We're not building processes built around more than just us. Yeah. Making sure we're focused. That's why we plan on transforming our front yard. There's 2 of us. We can't manage everything that needs to be managed today in the future. There's no way.
No, and there's we're still not sure if we can even manage it if everything produces one year.
That's the other part of it. How do you manage that? Which we could bring in help. We could. It just
We'd rather not.
we'd rather not. We've learned that we have to rely, and this is where we kind of struggle with community.
We need to build one around
We
here.
need to build one around here bad.
Because there is none.
But I also worry about community letting you down.
Yes. And
That's my thing. It's like if I'm depending on somebody to come here and help me, and then they're like, "I'm sorry, I can't," and I'm like, "Well, it's ready now, okay." Like,
it's some stuff we have to work through, though.
It is.
And find the right ones around
this
us
is
for the
my
community.
independence. This is my independence thing. This is where I'll just do it myself. Like, Aaron comes to me, he's like, "How do I need to do this?" And then he asks me 10 questions, and I'm like, "I'll just do it." I'll just do it.
I'm trying to get clarification.
He is. He's trying to get clarification. And this is my lack of patience and my independence where I'll just go and get it done because I already know what needs to be done. And my head is already 20 steps ahead. And that's how I work. And that's something I have to work on because he needs to know how to do it too. Because if I'm down and I don't feel good or something's wrong and he can't ask me, how's he going to know how to do it?
Yep.
This is where those... we have to work on our weakest links. And we're both weakest links in some area on the homestead.
Totally
we know that. Absolutely. Comes to muscle, I'm not that person. I'm just not.
Yeah. Well, if you got any comments, questions, anything you want to hear in a future episode, you can either send it to thecannycouple@yahoo.com or leave it down below on YouTube. And go and check out our link tree, which has all of our other content. You can find us on any social media site probably. But if we're not on that one, let us know that as well.
And as always, thank you for joining us on Rural Reliance with Canny Couple, where we work hard, live simple, and enjoy life. Have a wonderful day.